Today, I'm excited to be checking out the brand new Apple Watch Series 10 in jet black, and here I have both sizes. I've got the smaller 42mm version as well as the larger 46mm version to test and compare, and I'm also going to share with you my buying advice as someone who has worn and used an Apple Watch for many years. Now, the Series 10 specifically brings some pretty big improvements to the design, to the display, as well as performance, and adds some cool new features. So without further ado, let's check it out. But before we do, I am giving away this brand new iPhone 16 in Ultramarine. And for a chance to win, be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, comment your favorite feature of the Apple Watch Series 10 with your Instagram username, and then follow me on Instagram at Dion Schuddeboom, where I'll announce the winner on the 31st of October. Alright, so here we go. Let's start with the unboxings. Now, the 42mm version starts at $399, and the 46mm version comes in at $429, and then you can pay an additional $100 if you want the GPS and cellular version. But as always, I will leave the purchase links down in the description, so which one shall we unbox first? Let's go with the smaller size, the 42mm version, as I think that's going to be my preferred size, but of course, I will share my advice and thoughts on which size is best as we go. So here we go, very similar to last year. We have these two pull tabs on the back, and then we can flip the box open. Okay, so a little bit different packaging here. It's not as colorful as it was last year. Here we sort of have a silverish color showing different bands and combinations that you have with the watch. Now, I'll also talk you through the band choice that I made, but underneath we have two boxes. So we have the Apple Watch box and then the band box as well, which is very familiar if you've had an Apple Watch before. So let's move this off to the side and start here with the most important box, and that is the box that has the Apple Watch itself. Now, I'm really curious to check out the Series 10 as, well, Apple promised that we have a complete redesign of the Apple Watch. I'm really curious to see what that looks like in person, as the Apple Watch has looked the same, or at least very similar, for many years now. And lift the box. Here we go. Designed by Apple in California, as always. And then here we have the Apple Watch Series 10. So like I was saying, Apple say that they have done a complete redesign for the Apple Watch, which is the first time they've done this in a very long time. The Apple Watch has looked very similar. And looking at it now, I think they forgot to ship me my redesign. This here looks very similar. Now, I'm joking, of course, but this actually does look very similar on the outside, or at least from a first impressions perspective. However, if we do look closer, this version here does come with many differences. So to start, the Apple Watch Series 10 now has a bigger display and also a thinner design, so you actually get 30% more screen space compared to the Series 9. So the size differences are going to be from 41mm, which is the smaller version of the Series 9 that I'm wearing right now, compared to the now 42mm version of the Series 10. And we can get a brief look here and see how they compare. Now, the aspect ratio is going to also be a little bit different. So the Series 10 is a little bit wider, as I can see, and it's also a little bit more rounded on the edges. The Series 10 is also going to be the thinnest Apple Watch ever, so it's going to be 10% thinner compared to the Series 9. So the current depth here is going to be 9.7mm, which is 10% thinner than the Series 9. And this is something that, looking at it in person here, I do seem to notice. I find that particularly these sensors here on the back do seem to be a little bit more narrow than what they were previously. Let me just give you a quick look here with the Series 9 off. So here are the two next to each other, and you can see that the Series 10 here on the left is definitely a bit wider, and that's going to give you a wider aspect ratio, which is great for reading things like text or seeing notifications on your watch. And then the corners are a little bit more rounded as well. And then here, in terms of the thickness, if I look at them side by side, yeah, I would say the biggest difference in the thickness lies here with the sensors underneath, where I can see that this additional bump that you can see here, it doesn't protrude as far on the Series 10 as it does on the Series 9, and hopefully this will translate to a more comfortable wearing experience. But other than that, the side button and the digital crown, of course, the microphone looks very similar. And then here on the left-hand side, the speaker units are definitely quite different, where on the Series 10, we now have a more finer grill as opposed to two finer grills, as opposed to one larger cutout on the Series 9. And what is also cool is on the Series 10, you can now finally play music or a podcast directly from the watch speaker. But okay, let's take a look and see what else we have in the box here. So here we go, designed by Apple in California. And this is going to have our charging puck. And I just want to make sure that whether there's any difference or not with this. I don't think there will be, at least from a physical perspective. However, the Apple Watch Series 10 does now charge faster. And we can see that the charge puck itself here is the same as before. So we get a nice braided cable, which is good. And then the metal version here of the puck on the back, which looks a little bit nicer than the plastic one that you get with the Apple Watch SE. But like before, this is going to magnetically attach and charge your Apple Watch. Now, this Apple Watch does charge faster, so it's actually going to charge up to 80% battery in only 30 minutes. And this I think is great if you do use your watch for things like sleep tracking and you wake up with like a depleted battery and you want to quickly charge it while, say, you're showering and shaving in the morning, getting ready for the day. Those 30 minutes will be enough to give you 80% battery, which should be enough to get you through the day. And then sitting underneath, we have the paperwork, which looks very bland and boring. In fact, it's just going to be one sheet here of the warranty information. No stickers. Oh, I don't think we ever had stickers with the Apple Watch, but not even like a manual. So very simple unboxing experience. But now let's take a look at the second part of the box, and that here is going to be the band. So I want to talk you through my choice of band here and why I chose it. So I chose to go with the sports band in black. Now I think if you are new to the Apple Watch, this I think is the perfect starter band just because of its versatility, the comfort, and also the general ease of wear here. So this is the band right here. So let's go ahead and take it out and check it out. So this is, I think, the original Apple Watch band. They've had this for a long time. And of course I have the black model here to perfectly pair the new jet black color of the Series 10. Now the Series 9 came in midnight, and you can see that is a slightly less dark tone. So we got some blue undertones here on the midnight color, where the black version on the Series 10 is proper black. So let's go ahead and put this on the watch here. And like always, simply slide it into place here. Now, one thing I do notice looking at the sides of the Series 10 is that the watch band attachment mechanism sits lower than it does on the previous versions of the Apple Watch. And this should result in, you can see the band is going to be angled more downwards than it was before. So this small change here does make the watch actually immediately, I can feel it sitting more flush on my wrist here. Let me give you a quick look. There we go, looking good. So I like it right away. Yeah, I can feel that the band almost sits more flush with the watch because it goes, or more flush with my wrist because it curves down more sharply than it otherwise would. And I think it looks really good. So here's the 42mm Series 10 on my left arm, and then on my right here, I have the 41mm version of the Series 9. And just a little bit more about this sports band. Another reason why I really like it is because it's a super comfortable band to wear, and it's also very easy to clean. So if, say, you are working out with your watch, you can just take it off, detach it from the watch, put it in some dish soap and warm water, leave it for a couple minutes, and your watch will be like new. And I think this black color, of course, while it is a more sporty design, being made of rubber, does still look very understated and quite classy. I think it will suit in with many different occasions, even more formal occasions. And the last thing I really like is the fact that it's going to be really durable. I've used these for years, these sports bands, on older versions of the Apple Watch, and they've held up really well. So I do think they're going to hold up better than the braided and textile versions. And one more useful tip, I suggest getting the sports band over the solo loop version, as the solo loop version, while it is made of the same rubber material, does of course come in one size. So you really have to get the right size with that band, where the sports band, you can see we have many different adjustments and allows you to quickly resize the band on the fly. I also find that if, say, during a workout, you're getting hotter, you're more sweaty, your wrists will expand a little bit in size, and it's nice to be able to wear the watch a bit looser, where normally, or say when it's cold outside, your wrist will shrink a bit, and being able to adjust the band on the fly is super useful. So this is why ultimately, especially if you're new to the Apple Watch, I really recommend starting out here with the sports band, and you can always add to your collection from there. But okay, before we talk more about the features and particularly that jet black color, as I do have some thoughts right away, let's quickly unbox the 46mm version of the Series 10 as well. So I think the unboxing experience, as you can see, is going to be very similar, but still impressive nonetheless. I think Apple always does their unboxing experiences really quite well. And there we go, voila, and here it is. All right, so this definitely feels bigger. Wow, so this is the 46mm version, so also 1mm larger compared to the Series 9. However, this does translate into what seems like much more than 1mm, just because of that wider aspect ratio. And I will say that the thinner design is more apparent here on the larger version of the Series 10, primarily because, of course, the watch is larger, but this definitely feels thinner and looks thinner when I'm looking at this design. And let's take out the band as well here. There we go. And voila. So as you can see, I have the exact same setup for both Apple Watches here. That's because I want to do an apples to apples comparison, no pun intended. All right, so here I have both sizes unboxed and set up with their bands here. So here we have the 42mm version on the left-hand side, and then the 46mm version here over on the right. Now, I do have a more in-depth comparison video coming very soon, in which I will compare these sizes in more detail and also see how WatchOS compares on each watch, as that here is going to be an area where these two are very different. However, for this video, I do want to put both of them on my wrist and give you an idea of how the two compare and tell you why I'm leaning towards one size and not the other, and which I think may be best for you. All right, so here I've got both sizes on my wrist. So on my left hand here, I have the 42mm version, and then here on my right, I have the larger 46mm version, and this should give you an idea of how each size looks on my wrist. Now for context, I have 155mm wrists in terms of the circumference, and as you can see, while both do work, I ultimately do lean to the smaller 42mm version of the Apple Watch. Now, if you've watched my channel for a while, you know that this has typically been the case even on my Series 9. I do have the smaller 41mm version as opposed to the larger 45mm version. And here, I think this remains true for the Series 10. I just believe that the smaller version, the 42mm version, is more proportionate and looks best on my wrist. And I do think that if your wrist is a similar size to mine, which I would say is small to medium size wrist or just below average for men's, I think the 42mm version just looks more proportionate, where the 46mm version, again, it is possible to wear. It's not like stretching beyond my wrist or anything, but it looks a little bit more like I'm wearing a gadget on my wrist, where the 42mm version looks more like a watch. But of course, there are pros and cons to both sizes. Like I said, with watchOS in particular, the larger size does have some advantages in terms of being able to see more content on screen at a time. But that is something I'll explore more in my upcoming video, so be sure to subscribe to not miss that video. But this here gives you a look at how the two compare. Of course, the watch bands themselves are identical in size. You can see I do have them on different sizes because the larger watch here on the Series 10. There we go. So here's how they look from above, and back here from the top view. Now, I also want to talk about the color, as this is the first time we're seeing this jet black color here on the Apple Watch, and it's going to be very different compared to previous versions because this is still the aluminum version of the Apple Watch, not the stainless steel version, which I actually don't make anymore. So you now have the titanium version if you want a more premium look, but I've always thought that the aluminum version was by far the best value, so that's the one that I usually got. But compared to the previous Series 9, you'll see that we have a glossy texture as opposed to the matte texture here. So again, both are aluminum, but the Series 9 is the midnight color here, has that brushed finish, and then we have this very glossy finish on the Series 10. And I quite like it. I've got to say, it definitely does stand out a little bit more. It really does look like stainless steel, even if it is aluminum. And I think that adds a nice little premium touch to the watch. I like the contrast between the matte finish on the band, and then we have this nice polished finish on the watch. I think it looks really quite clean. And you can see this glossy finish here carries all the way over through to the back. It's like one solid piece. As you can see, previously we had sort of a glass insert. This is now also made out of aluminum, and I quite like it. Now, you do also have other color options for the Series 10. So there is going to be a brushed version of the rose as well as the gold colors, which are quite nice. And we also have aluminum as well as silver, which are also going to be brushed. So black is the only one that has this polished finish, and I really think that this is the best color. And why do I say this? Well, I think the black color is going to be most versatile. It's going to suit with most outfits and occasions. The dark color does look more formal, so I think you can even wear it with a suit, even on the sports band, because it is black. Or say you're wearing a semi-casual, smart casual outfit, I think the dark color is going to look at home in any kind of setting. And what's also neat is because the watch is going to be very dark, you can also pair it with any color band. This is something that's much more difficult to do if you say get the gold color or particularly the rose gold color, where your options for pairing different bands are going to be much more limited. So I think if you are unsure about which color to get, I think you really can't go wrong, particularly this year with that jet black color. It just looks so clean, so minimalistic, and also timeless. I think it's a color you're never going to get bored of, and it's one that will definitely suit any occasion. Do I prefer it over the midnight? I've got to say I really like the midnight color just because it has that hint of blue, so it does sort of stand out a little bit. But at the same time, I do prefer the glossy finish on the Series 10. So all in all, I would say I would take the Series 10 over the Series 9 just because of that glossy finish. I think that really looks nice. You can see it adds just a touch of shine here when I angle it into the light. And I think that really does sort of complete the look. Plus the slightly larger display on the Series 10, I think will be a noteworthy upgrade. You can see without making the physical watch that much larger, and that's in part because the display actually stretches out further to the edges, so you have thinner bezels, and that allows for a larger display in a relatively small watch case. And then in terms of battery life, Apple quote the same 18 hours of battery life, which is going to be an all-day setup here, and this is going to be the same as on the previous Apple Watches. And in my experience, I've had my Series 9 definitely last me all day with battery still to spare. But if you are unsure about how to set up your Apple Watch or which settings to use, I do have a very complete and thorough guide on this, which I'll leave linked at the end of the video to show you how to set up your Apple Watch to get the most out of its features as well as its battery life. Right, let's talk about the new features that come with the Series 10 over the Apple Watch Series 9. Now, the biggest we already talked about, and that's going to be that larger display as well as the thinner design, but there is also more. So we also now get a wide-angle OLED display, and this is supposed to give you 40% higher brightness when looking at the display from an angle. Now, you can imagine that for a watch, that is particularly useful. If, say, you want to casually watch, or more subtly rather, check the watch from your wrist. You don't have to look at it head on. And this, I think, will be a useful feature. Of course, I'm going to compare it. I never thought that the off-angle viewing was bad on the previous versions, but of course, having a brighter screen, especially off axis, is always a plus. Now, the Apple Watch Series 10 is going to be more power efficient, and this allows for the always on mode on the display to refresh more quickly. So to give you an example here, you'll see this here on the Series 9. You'll see that when the display is in the always on mode, which is what it currently is. In fact, let me put it on my wrist real quick. There we go. So as you can see here on my Series 9, you don't see the second tick here on the screen as I'm currently in the always on mode. This only shows when I twist my wrist and actually wake up the display. Now on the Series 10, this second hand should be visible on the display even when you are on the always on display mode, which I think will add a nice touch and make the watch look a little bit more mechanical and more like a watch. So this is something I think is quite impressive of Apple to have achieved, despite having the same 18 hours of battery life. And what is also cool is that you can now finally play your media on the built-in speakers of the Apple Watch, so things like your music or your podcast. I don't know how much I'm going to be using this. This really depends on the quality of the speaker, so it's something I'm going to be testing for my full review, but it is nice to finally have the ability to do so. I never fully understood why that wasn't there before. Now, in terms of health features, the Series 10 does add a new ability, and that is the ability to track and also detect sleep apnea. So this is going to be for people who have difficulty breathing while sleeping. So it is really cool to see Apple add to the list of health features on the Series 10 and the Apple Watch. I think it's already saved many lives over the years, and this feature here is going to enable people to detect health conditions earlier, and that I think is an absolute win. So the more of this, I think the better. We also have a new depth app, and this is going to be geared towards diving and swimming. It won't be as comprehensive as on the Apple Watch Ultra 2, which we're also going to be looking at in a bit in a separate video, but it does allow you to track your depth when you are diving, especially on the Series 10. This will be really nice to have. And then finally, we have the new S10 chip inside. That's what's going to be powering this Apple Watch, so it should give you performance for many years, and again, more efficiency to allow for more features with the same battery life. So all in all, I'm really excited to start wearing and testing the Apple Watch Series 10. Again, I am going to be going for the 42mm version. I think both there definitely have their place. And again, I do have a more in-depth comparison coming soon, but I think the 42mm version here looks right at home on my wrist. And I do think that based on the new features we see here, it does look like it's a pretty major upgrade over the Series 9. And this also means that the gap between the Series 10 and the SE2 is now even bigger. But I've got a lot of Apple Watch content coming up, so be sure to subscribe to not miss that. And let me know if you have any questions at all, and as always, I will leave all the purchase links down in the description. Thanks for watching, and take care.